Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Break in Tech, the show where we spotlight non traditional talent in tech, people who are learning fast, carving out meaningful careers in technology. So, today I'm thrilled to have with us Kayode Ajayi. And did I say it correctly?
Yes, good
Okay,
enough.
perfect. So, Coyote is a Microsoft MVP in the Power App space, which is one of the most respected recognitions. He is a Power Platform solution architect, a Microsoft certified trainer, a community organizer. Coyote does it all, okay? And he is passionate about helping people develop real technical skills and confidence. So, welcome to Break in Tech, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks, Malika. I'm really glad to be here.
Right. Now, before we get into all the tech talk, I want to hear about your story. So
Right.
let's take it back. Before the MVP recognition, before all the success in the Power Apps world, when did your interest in tech first spark?
That's a very interesting question. I like that question. I'll say for me, when it comes to tech, is way back. So I think you've just talked about like the very recent things, but it goes way back on up until say maybe 5 years old, 3 years old, about that age, because I remember having some toys that could move. All those toys that you operate using remote and all, like a car, and I will always break them apart because I just want to see how what's actually powering them, how are they able to move. So I'll say that's like my first introduction to tech. And for me, it's just about that being inquisitive. I've always been inquisitive. Always wanted to know how things work. How do they work behind the hood, right? So when it comes to technology, I've not really always seen myself just as a user, but as a creator. So that's kind of what has really brought me into the world of tech. And once I've got into university, then I got exposed to much more things. I had a computer then. That was the age when I actually had a laptop myself. So I would go on YouTube, get lost on in different videos about animation, about game design, about programming. Yeah, I just tried to learn everything all because I was fascinated about everything. So that's really how I got into tech from myself, and it's just been like learning one thing. Once I learn it to an extent, I'm like, oh, n- animation. Once you take animation and you add programming, then that's game design. Then I go and learn game design, and it's just been like layered upon whatever I'd learned previously. So yeah, that's how I go into tech.
That's really interesting to know your path at such a young age and to have that level of self-awareness,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And so you recognized your interest and you you leaned into that. But did you have any role models? Did you like have older siblings who were pulling their cars apart and
Right.
analyzing as well? Who shaped that
Hmm.
curiosity and who nurtured that? Because sometimes as children, I feel like you can have an interest, but if there isn't someone who really supports that, it doesn't go far. So I'm
Hmm.
imagining you had some role models and supporters at that early age. Who were those people?
Well, that's interesting because I've not really thought that deep before.
This is the podcast where we get deep about tech.
Yeah. Because I've not really thought that deep before. I know and I remember this because I really tried to get it, but while I was tinkering with stuff, I remember building like an helicopter using electric motors and batteries and stuff. And I remember my dad saying, "Well, if you can make it fly, I can't remember what he said he was going to give me. Maybe he said he was going to like maybe buy me a computer or something like that if I could make it fly. So I don't know. Maybe maybe that's part of it. But I wouldn't say it was really external for me. To be fair, it's just me trying to know stuff. Obviously, we consume a lot of content. We watch a lot of videos. So when we talk about animation, well, I've always been a lover of cartoons since I was young. So when I realized that, I can actually have the same software that they use in professional studios to create animation, then that just makes me feel like, oh wow, there's a lot of power in my hands, and I can actually create, not just be a consumer as I've always been. So that's just how it has been for me. Even when it comes to apps too, well, obviously I've had phones, I've used applications, but when I realized that, wow, I can actually write some code and create an app myself, then that just makes me want to learn it more. So it's not really been so much of external. Then I'll say, well, while I was in secondary school too, I had a friend that he was quite far off in the programming journey. So he had a computer then. I didn't have any. He had a computer. So he was learning Java. He built some applications. And, I think that was my first realization that, someone can actually build applications on a computer by themselves. So I'll say that made me know it's possible. And one way or the other, I would say that was like my first inspiration because he was the first person I knew who had a computer and who was actually using it to write code. Then at some point, I did computer training. That's when I learned graphic design. So I was in like a space where people were learning programming and things like that. So I'll say it was firstly my curiosity. Then after then, because of my curiosity, I found myself in spaces where people used to like do tech stuff. And I'll say maybe that's how I started soaking it in more.
Okay, so I'm hearing layered learning structured by your curiosity.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
yeah,
And I'm so happy that, you were able to have that intrinsic motivation, and that
yeah.
led the way, as opposed to it being something external, parental influence, or etc. So this is amazing. Now,
Thank you.
let's talk about where you are now.
Yeah.
When did you officially step into tech as a profession?
Okay. So yeah, my story is quite interesting because I think by now you know that I've tried my hands on many, many, many things.
Yes.
So it was a journey for me because, well, I think animation brought me into this space, which is weird to think. But while I was in university, because I did used to do 3D animation then, and a couple of my friends knew, um, in terms of how professional that was, it wasn't like world class or anything. But people knew that I do animation. That's why I kind of encourage people, if you're learning something, where we kind of tend to try to learn in isolation, but kind of it's we are in a world now where it pays for you to even learn in the public, right? You're learning something, but share your journey. So because then I wasn't like fantastic at animation, but at least people knew that I used to do animation. So one day someone just messaged me, oh, they had a contact that was looking for an animation trainer, someone to come and train some kids animation. And they were like, oh, am I up for it? Well, I wasn't 100% at animation, but I was like, yeah, I'll go for it. Why not? Why will I see an opportunity and not go for it, right? I can always, try to learn more and prepare just before I go for the training. So that was how, I went, delivered the training. So the company was like a tech company. They actually do power up stuff. But they also do some social projects where they train young students on different things. So that's how the whole animation thing came about. So I went there for animation training and I did excellently. Everybody loved what I did, even the young kids. It was, I myself as an animation trainer, I was quite impressed at what they were able to do, within the short time. And they were very young, somewhere like 3 to 5 years old, somewhere like 5 years old, 7 years old. So but they were really able to do stuff within a short period of time. So I was really impressed with that. and I'll say the organization too, they were impressed with that. And then I was still, I think I hadn't gone for my NYSC then. So and that was the chapter then. It kind of closed there. Then after my NYSC, after my NYSC, I realized that they had an opening. So I just applied. But obviously they already knew me then. And that's just how I applied to be a Power Apps developer. Before then, I attended this seminar on Power BI. So that was my first hearing of the Power Platform generally. After that seminar, I started like watching some stuff on YouTube to just learn more about Power Apps and stuff like that. So that kind of helped me when I was doing the interview for the Power Apps role. But they knew I had no experience with Power Apps. But I guess because of, my previous relationship with them, how well I studied computer science also, then I already had some programming knowledge. It's just I didn't have Power Apps knowledge. So for me, that's how I got into Power Apps. And since then, I've been less of a jack of all trades because I just kind of focused fully on, Power Apps and the Power Platform stuff. And yeah, it's really worked out for me that way.
So you've mentioned NYSC. Is that the
Yeah.
National Youth Service for
Yes.
those? Okay,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
So that is typically, is that a 1 to 2 year
Well, in
program?
Nigeria, it's a 1 year program.
Okay, 1 year program that is mandatory post college.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Post
just for
university.
listeners who might not be familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And that was, so the organization that you did that 1 year experience with was also the one that you did the training, the animation training with?
So the NYSC thing is like a is like a training that happens post university, as you've said, and it's not necessarily tied to an organization. So I did the NYSC in a separate thing that it wasn't really related to tech. But so the organization is different from where I did the NYSC. So it was after the NYSC because usually what happens is a lot of people after NYSC, that's when they start looking for the actual jobs they're going to do. So I was at a point where I had so many skills about different things, but none of them was world class. And I didn't feel like I was employable. So I was in a big state of dilemma, to be fair, because I was a jack of all trades. I knew so many things, but I didn't feel like I knew them deep enough. So, but yeah, after I applied to that organization, I got accepted as a Power Apps developer, and you know, so I think till today, I'm still very grateful to them because I didn't have any skill in Power Apps. I had programming skills, but I didn't have Power Apps skills, and I still got accepted. So that's why it's good for organizations to to give people a chance because I was given a chance, and that's really what brought me into this field.
Absolutely. So now that you've come to this place where you've niched down and now you're even at a point where you're continuing the journey of helping more people get into Power Apps, how important is it for people to find their fit and that niche and focus, and how early on their journey should they be attempting to do that? For the listeners who are coming from a non-traditional tech, who are just starting out, how soon should they be seeking a niche to
Mm.
focus on in their journey? Is it like 1 to 3 years of exploration, and then by the fourth and fifth year, listen, you need to figure it out? How?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
do you think?
I think what I've always said is, explore. And I think I still tell people that explore for you to find what you're passionate about. And it now depends on, well, age is a number, right? But it depends on maybe your age too sometimes. I feel like spend the earlier years to explore. And, as time goes on, then you now start to niche down. And yeah, it's a mix because I don't want people to feel like, oh, it's too late for me, because it's not too late. right? No matter what stage you are, if there's something you want to explore, something you want to learn more about, go ahead and learn. Right now, I'm trying to learn photography. And, that's something that I'm spending some time, watching videos about, trying things around. You understand? So if I compare myself now to someone who has been doing photography for many years, well, they'll probably be way better than me. But I'm not saying, because I've not started early, I'm not still going to go into it. Right. So, in terms of niche, it's always good to have a niche, especially when you are trying to get yourself in a professional space. And sometimes I even tell people, when it comes to your LinkedIn, you don't want to have, animator and say Power Apps developer trying to take up space in your LinkedIn. If a recruiter looks at that profile, it's like, well, maybe you're not so focused. But if you look at my profile and you see animator and you see animations throughout, you know that this person is, serious about animation. So I feel like it's good to niche down, especially when you're trying to get employed. But still explore your curiosity, because I know people that where they start their career is not where they are today. So you can always transition. So don't feel locked in, right? Say you start as an accountant and you're getting to find more information about, say, Power Apps, for example. Spend some time learning it, and who knows, you might just find out that an opportunity comes up and you can apply and you just get employed, and that's how you've done your transition. So don't feel locked in to one space. So I think my answer to that question is it's never too late. Don't feel locked in into what you're doing now. You can always still find time to explore, and who knows, you don't know where you find yourself tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So that actually answered my next question. So I'm glad you led with that. And can you tell us a bit more about Power Apps for those listeners who have never heard of Power Apps? What is
Yeah.
Power Apps, and what exactly do you do with Power Apps?
Okay. So yeah, Power Apps, and I'm just trying to make it generalized now. Power Apps is a low code tool, and when I say low code, it means that unlike traditional programming like Java, where you have to like write a lot of code to get your visuals, to get an app built, basically. With Power Apps, you use a visual editor, so it's more like a drag and drop. We always make it sound very simple, but when you get into the real world, it's not as simple as we make it sound, because you're still building real apps for real people. So there's like a proper process you need to, follow to make that happen. But compared to traditional programming, I would say is much more easier for people who don't have a programming background to learn. And that can be a very good way for you to transition into tech, and you start building apps. But they're business applications. So earlier on, when I started Power Apps, I used to think, oh well, I could build a Power App and put it on Play Store or App Store, and use that as a simple way to build app for the public. But that's not the case. The apps you build with Power Apps are within the context of an organization. So what I do as my day job is I build apps, I build automations for companies all around the world. And for business, their business applications. So a lot of times, even the departments within the organization is called business applications, because that's what we build. We build business applications. So within your company, if you have some custom applications, those are the kind of apps that we build. Things like HR applications, leave request applications, IT request applications, stuff like that.
Awesome. And now that there are like um, AI agents
Yeah.
and different things coming up, does that work with Power Apps, or does that replace Power Apps? What what where does that stand?
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm just
so
thinking.
I'll say this: outside of work, right now I build a lot of stuff using AI. So I use stuff like Gemini, Gemini, Google AI Studio. I use some those technologies to build applications, which I plan to make like public, so not just business applications in that sense. So I do that, but within the business applications world, you're trying to find out, is anything changing? Now, Microsoft is on top of this, and Microsoft, they're also one of the leaders in the AI, in this AI revolution that we have, and they were like early investors in the AI revolution that we are seeing today. So, within Power Apps, there are loads of stuff that Microsoft is doing to bring AI. So right now, there's something called Vibe, so you can build a Vibe app. So that's using vibe.powerapps.com. You can build a Vibe app, which is a similar experience where you just type in a description of the app you want and Power App creates it for you. Even within the normal Power Apps Maker Studio, you can just type in a description and it builds an app for you. Now, the app is not going to be like your end result, right? But in some cases, it's good for quick proof of concept. You just want to show a proof of concept. The time it will have taken you to build everything from scratch, you could just type a description and it builds it out for you. And within Power Apps now, Microsoft has something called the Plan Designer. So once you type in what you want to build, it kind of comes up with a plan for you. It helps you think through the solution. So it helps you think of, okay, who are the people that are going to be involved? What kind of data are you going to need? What kind of automations are you going to need? What kind of app are you going to need? So it even helps you decide sometimes whether you use a Canvas app or a model driven app. So Microsoft is like investing much more in bringing AI to, the app building experience and to make it easy for less technical people to start building apps. So there's so much Microsoft is doing around that. Yeah, I think so. Well, for a creator like myself, I'll say a lot still stays the same because we already have tested and trusted processes. So a lot of the AI stuff that are coming up now, they are more experimental and just to make sure that you're not left behind. Or a lot of them are not really stuff that we are taking to production right now. So all the knowledge, all the things we have before, it's not outdated. Is still very relevant.
Okay, so that's great for anyone who's interested in learning Power Apps. It's still very much a growing need for this,
Yeah,
even with the introduction of AI and AI
yeah,
agents.
yeah,
Okay, so let's shift into what your work with training and building a community, a learning community, right?
yeah.
Tell the listeners a bit about what led you to shift into now training and helping others build these skills.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me, especially with the way I got into Power Platform in general, as I said earlier, I attended a free community event. And, that was the first time I heard Power Apps. That was the first time I heard Power BI. And so because of that, I have this, mindset to give and bring more people in because I've really benefited from this journey. And, even coming to the UK, because originally I was based in Nigeria, even coming to the UK, I've just kind of been catapulted to the top more or less because of this niche. If I wasn't in this field, I don't know if I would be as relevant as I am now. So I kind of feel, indebted to the community to, share and help people. And, the Power Platform space, also the Power Platform community are very, very helpful. And, I feel privileged to be part of the people that are investing because it's not really easy to do community stuff actually because a lot of times you're so much worked up with work and you still have to like organize this event and you still have to gather people together and things like that. It's not very easy, but it's very rewarding, especially when you hear feedback. Like recently when I got MVP and I posted on LinkedIn, I think one comment that really stood out to me was someone who said, "Oh, that they're glad that I've gotten this now because I trained them when they were starting out in the power platform space." And when I saw that, it really made my heart very warm. And I went to look at their profile and I saw, yes, they're still in power apps and they are doing really, really well. So I'm really glad to be a part of that journey. And many, many more. Very recently too, I've started doing stuff in Nigeria with young students where I'm teaching them about AI, app development, and just seeing the feedback. Like there was one we did where we were teaching young students how to like create apps, how to use AI to augment their learning. And it was just like a 2 hour training. And after then, I was really like, I couldn't shut my mouth when I saw, what they built. These are people that they didn't have any programming experience before then, but just teaching them about AI, teaching them about prompting, they were able to build like applications that I could not even think about myself. So I was really, really impressed. So things like that just make me want to do more and, find more ways to, make people know about tech. And I'm not trying to say everybody should come into tech because that's not realistic. We still need doctors. We still need, professionals in other fields. But I feel like there's this thing that tech does is it opens up your mind to know to understand that every technology you see, there's stories behind it. There are people behind it. There are people that put in their brain work. There are people that took time to design even the phone you're using. Every bit of the phone, there are people that really invested time to get it to the way it works. So getting into tech or learning about tech makes you it opens up your mind to know that yes, a phone didn't just drop from heaven. Like real people, invested time, real people did it. So if they can create something that is usable like this, then you can actually do something. You can actually create something, and it doesn't have to be a tech product. It doesn't even have to be tech, but it just shows you that it tells you what is possible when human minds come together to create something.
Absolutely. Right, right. Yeah, I totally agree in terms of it's not about taking anyone from any other industry, but just enabling them to uh have this sense of, I guess, design thinking and
Yeah, exactly.
solutioning at scale, right?
Yeah,
So we're finding their problems exist across all
yeah,
sectors, and
exactly.
it's the thinking that, okay, how do I approach this problem and solve it at scale? And I think
Yeah,
that being in tech has allowed me to develop the mindset and also the skill set and the tool sets to see how that is doable. Right, right, right. So thank you for sharing that.
yes, thank
And
you.
so if you, I know you said you've been working with a lot of young people, and you see their level of innovation and the things that they come up with in such a short amount of time. So if there is one skill or one habit that you think makes the biggest difference early on, what what would you recommend to anyone, whether they're 5 years old or 50 years old?
Yeah. Okay, so what will I recommend to anyone, irrespective of their age in terms of a skill? Um, I'll say one thing that has helped me is research and trial. Right. So don't be scared to try things. Don't be scared to try things. I don't know if we can call that a skill.
I think that's a skill. Take a risk. Take a risk,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Don't and it's even something that I am finding important much more as I begin to grow, right? Is there are a lot of opportunities that I've taken right now that I would not have because as far as I was concerned, I wasn't qualified for it. So as you go on in life, don't restrict yourself to just what you are qualified for. Because what you're bringing to the table is different, and a lot of times, what how we gauge whether we're qualified for something is we look at other people. Right now, there are people that could be better than you in something, but you're also bringing something to the table, right? And your value might be the value you're bringing is probably different from what another person is bringing. Just like myself now, when it comes to business analysis side of things, is something that I'm just starting to learn much more, but I'm very technical. So when within a certain space, I can look at myself and be like, oh, I'm not, I'm not giving the right value. But because of my technical knowledge, I'm bringing a different kind of value. So if there's something I would say, is don't be scared to try stuff. Don't let people disqualify you. Don't disqualify yourself because a lot of times we disqualify ourselves before people disqualify us. Get yourself to a point where, okay, you've done your best, you've put yourself there, and if you now still get rejected, and even when you get rejected, you know that's not the end of the world. You just take it as a learning point and you see what you can do or to tweak and try again. So yeah, I don't know what the summary of that is, but um yeah, I think I've
I think it's
passed the
well
message.
well said. So be willing to try new things. Be
Yeah,
a risk taker.
yeah,
And what you said about starting before you're ready, and I think that's
yeah.
really
I
key.
like that. Oh, you've said it really well. Starting before you're ready. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Start before you're ready, before you have that certification
Yeah,
or a college degree. Many pivoters might feel inferior to others who have the tech degrees and
yeah,
all these certifications. Yes, build competency, but you bring a different value. You bring
yeah,
perspective, and
yeah,
is different. That's it's a different type of value, like you said.
yeah,
Yeah, and on my journey as well, I see that. I've seen that. So what we have is leverage. We bring experience from a different industry, a
yeah,
different way of
yeah.
doing things, and it does add value. So,
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I was saying that, I wasn't even thinking of people who transition,
mm,
but when people transition, I feel like that is a lot of value because they are bringing a different kind of experience, and one way or the other within your team, it becomes valuable. So yeah, that's a good part. I really wasn't thinking about that, but I think it's
okay.
falling nicely there.
Right, right. So that I mean it all aligns because um on the podcast here we want to encourage people from non-traditional paths to
Yeah.
see themselves in tech. And if you don't want to leave your industry, that's fine. But I think tech is for everyone, and
Mm,
you can remain a doctor and still be tech savvy. You can still learn Power
exactly.
Apps.
Yeah. Yeah.
It will only add to your skill set. It will only add to the impact that you have in your organization.
Yeah,
Yep, yep,
100%.
exactly. And so, um, I think we covered your origin story, where you are now, and what you're doing to really build legacy. Because when you help
Yeah,
others, that impact that you have will that's what lives on,
yeah,
not our nine
yeah.
to fives, but the lives that we touch. And I think it's so great what you're doing. I
Thank
know it's
you.
not easy. It's not
No,
e-
it's not.
it's not
It's
easy
not.
because there's work, there's family
Yeah, and
life,
we've
there
only just
is
started.
right, right. So I mean it's a sacrifice, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
And so tell our listeners who are interested if they'd like to be a part of anything you have going on in terms of
yeah.
your education. training programs, or if they'd like to tune into your journey,
Yeah.
where can they find you?
Okay. Well, I think especially professionally, the place you can find me is LinkedIn. That's really the only thing that's the only thing I maintain. And my LinkedIn URL is well, my LinkedIn profile is Niger Tech Mentor. So NaijaTechMentor. So Niger Tech Mentor. So if you want to search me up, you can search me up with that. It's not a handle, but you know how you have the LinkedIn URL. That's
Yes.
like my handle there. So then I think the next big thing that I've just recently started is not public yet, but I've started a podcast with a colleague of mine, and the podcast is Power Platform Deep Dive. So we're gonna go public very soon. We did a test recording and it was awesome. I think the actual test recording will be published because we had such a good conversation that will really be impactful if we share that. So we'll probably be releasing the test recording. So but yeah, that's something that you know I'm gonna be spending more time on in the coming weeks. So Power Platform Deep Dive podcast. So yeah, we'll probably be having it on the different available podcast platforms too.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So you heard it here, everyone. If you are
You heard
interested
it
in learning
first.
Power Apps, right, here first, please make sure that you follow Coyote on LinkedIn at his handle. I'll also put that in the description,
All right, thank you.
definitely. So, Coyote, thank you so much for sharing your story with
Yes,
us.
thank you, thank
This
you.
conversations like this is exactly why Break in Tech exists.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank everyone who's tuned in for joining. And we will catch you on the next episode. Thank you all.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great one.
Uh,